Dear friends, welcome to Heritage of the Caucasus. Thank you for being with us, for sharing in this search for truth, memory, and justice. Please subscribe, like, and share this video. Only together can we preserve history and build the future. Today, we present the full translation of a historic speech by President Emmanuel Macron, delivered at the United Nations General Assembly on September 22, 2025. In this speech, France officially recognized the State of Palestine. This address is not only a diplomatic act, but also a word spoken to the conscience of humanity. We now present it in full, preserving the rhythm and intonation of Emmanuel Macron. Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, we are here because the time has come. The time has come to free the 48 hostages held by Hamas. The time has come to stop the war, the bombings in Gaza, the massacres, and the flight of populations. The time has come because urgency is everywhere. The time of peace has come, for we are only moments away from no longer being able to grasp it. That is why we are gathered here today. Some will say too late, others too early. One thing is certain, we can no longer wait. In 1947, this assembly decided on the partition of Mandate Palestine into two states, one Jewish and the other Arab, thus recognizing each people's right to self-determination. The international community there consecrated the State of Israel, fulfilling the destiny of that people, at last, after millennia of wandering and persecution, and which was able to found such a beautiful democracy. The promise of an Arab state, however, remains, to this day, unfinished. Since then, Israelis and Palestinians have walked a long road where hope and despair have been intertwined, each in their own way. And we have walked alongside them, each of us according to our history and sensibility. But the truth is that we carry the collective responsibility for having failed, until now, to build a just and lasting peace in the Near East. This became self-evident on October 7th, 2023. When the Israeli people suffered the worst terrorist attack in its history. 1,224 men, women, and children killed, 4,834 men, women, and children wounded, 251 men, women, and children abducted. The barbarity of Hamas and of those who collaborated in this massacre shocked Israel and the world. October 7th remains an open wound for the Israeli soul as well as for the universal conscience. We condemn it without any nuance, for nothing, ever, anywhere, can justify recourse to terrorism. Today, we think of the victims and their families. We express our compassion to Israelis and demand, before anything else, that all hostages still held in Gaza be released unconditionally. We French have paid national tribute to our 51 compatriots murdered that day, and to all the victims of October 7th, 2023. We will not forget them. Never. Just as we will never cease the existential fight against anti-Semitism. We French know the bite of terrorism. We carry in our hearts the memory of the fraternity shown after the attacks committed in Paris on January 7th, 2015, when dozens of foreign leaders marched with us. First among them the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the Palestinian Authority. We know that there can be no weakness in the face of terrorists. We also know the danger of endless wars. We know that law must always prevail over force. And we know, finally, from our own history, that attachment to the universal and to peace is both the heritage of centuries past and the condition of salvation. I affirm this in the name of our friendship with Israel, to whom our commitment has never failed. In the name also of our friendship with the Palestinian people, for whom we wish the original promise of the United Nations. Two states living side by side in peace and security, to become reality. Yet at this very hour, Israel is still extending its military operations in Gaza with the stated objective of destroying Hamas. But it is the lives of hundreds of thousands of displaced, wounded, starving, and traumatized people that continue to be destroyed. This, even though Hamas has been considerably weakened, and negotiations for a durable ceasefire remain the surest means to obtain the release of the hostages. Nothing any longer justifies the continuation of the war in Gaza. Nothing. Everything, on the contrary, commands that it be brought to a definitive end now, if not earlier, to save lives. The lives of Israeli hostages still held in atrocious conditions. The lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians crushed by hunger, suffering, the fear of death, the mourning of their loved ones. To save all lives. For now, for nearly 2 years, it is indeed the negation of the other's humanity and the sacrifice of human life that have prevailed. Yes, since October 7th, it is the life of the other that has been denied. We have said it since the first day of the war in Gaza. One life equals one life. I know this, having held in my arms the families of hostages I met in Tel Aviv and then in Paris. I think at this moment of the mother of Ayatar David, a hostage, starved and shown to the crowd by his tormentors. I think of Nimrod Cohen, a 19-year-old hostage whose father I have just greeted. I know it too, for I went to the bedside of Palestinian victims of Israeli military operations, refugees in Al Arish, women and children whose gaze I will never forget. I know it for having met young people from Gaza welcomed in France, and I think of Rita Baroud, who should have been with us today, and who continues to bear witness to the distress of her loved ones in Gaza. One life equals one life, and our duty, all of us, is to protect both, a duty indivisible, just as our common humanity is indivisible. There is a solution to break the cycle of war and destruction. It is the recognition of the other, of their legitimacy, their humanity, and their dignity. That each side open its eyes and see human faces where war has placed the mask of the enemy or the features of a target. It is the recognition that Israelis and Palestinians live in a twin solitude. The solitude of Israelis after the historical nightmare of October 7th, 2023, and the solitude of Palestinians, exhausted by this endless war. The time has come. For the worst may occur, the sacrifice of many more civilians, the expulsion of Gaza's population toward Egypt, the annexation of the West Bank, the death of hostages held by Hamas, or fates accompli that irreversibly change the situation on the ground. That is why we must today, here and now, open this path to peace. For since July, the acceleration of events has been terrible. We may come to fear that the Abraham Accords or Camp David be called into question by Israel's actions, and that peace become impossible for a long time in the Middle East. A historic responsibility, therefore, weighs upon us. We must do everything to preserve the very possibility of a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. The time has come. That is why, faithful to my country's historic commitment in the Near East, for peace between the Israeli and Palestinian peoples, I declare that France recognizes today the State of Palestine. This recognition is a way of affirming that the Palestinian people is not one people too many. That it is, on the contrary, a people that never bids farewell to anything, to borrow the words of Mahmoud Darwish. A people strong in its history, its rootedness, its dignity. Recognizing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people takes nothing away from the rights of the Israeli people, which France has supported from the very first day, and to which we are no less attached. Precisely because we are convinced that this recognition is the solution that alone will allow peace for Israel. Never has France failed Israel when its security was at stake, including in the face of Iranian strikes. This recognition of the State of Palestine is a defeat for Hamas and for all those who stoke anti-Semitic hatred, feed anti-Zionist obsessions, and seek the destruction of the State of Israel. This recognition by France is accompanied by those that will be announced today, among others, and I thank them, by Andorra, Australia, Belgium, Canada, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and San Marino, who waited with us for this moment and, heeding July's call, have chosen responsibility, rigor, and peace. This follows the choice made in 2024 by Spain, Ireland, Norway, and Slovenia, and by so many others before them. This recognition opens the path to negotiations useful to both Israelis and Palestinians. That path is the plan for peace and security for all that Saudi Arabia and France submitted to a vote in this assembly, which adopted it by a very large majority. It carries our common ambition to break the cycle of violence and to change the facts on the ground. We have managed to take steps toward one another, to move beyond our habitual postures, and to set concrete objectives. It now falls to us together to trigger a mechanism of peace that meets each side's needs. The first phase of this plan for peace and security for all is that of absolute urgency, to to couple the release of the 48 hostages with the end of military operations across the entire territory of Gaza. I salute the efforts of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States to achieve this, and ask Israel to do nothing further that would hinder their success. Hamas has been defeated militarily by the neutralization of its leaders and decision-makers. It must be defeated politically in order to be truly dismantled. As soon as a ceasefire has been agreed, we will have to make a massive collective effort to bring relief to the people of Gaza. I thank Egypt and Jordan for their commitment here and remind Israel of its absolute obligation to facilitate humanitarian access to Gaza to aid a population today deprived of everything. The second phase is stabilization and reconstruction in Gaza. A transition administration integrating the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian youth, accompanied by security forces whose training we will accelerate, will hold a monopoly on security in Gaza. It will carry out the dismantling and disarmament of Hamas, with the support of international partners and the means necessary for this difficult mission. France stands ready to contribute to an international stabilization mission, and together with its European partners, to support the training and equipping of Palestinian security forces. When negotiations allow, the Security Council will be able to decide on the deployment of a civil and security support mission, in liaison with the Palestinian authorities and with the consent of the Israeli authorities. It will also fall to the State of Palestine to restore hope to its people, worn down by years of violence and occupation, but also by division and misrule. It will therefore have to offer its people a renewed and secure democratic framework. President Mahmoud Abbas has made this commitment to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and to me. He has strongly condemned the terrorist attacks of October 7, 2023. He has declared his support for the disarmament of Hamas and has committed to exclude it from governance in Gaza as well as across all Palestinian territory. He has affirmed his commitment to fighting hate speech and has promised a profound renovation of Palestinian governance. France will be attentive to the full implementation of each of the commitments made to it. This renewed Palestinian Authority is a necessary condition for the success of the indispensable negotiations that must resume in order to reach agreement on each of the final status issues. In this framework, I will also be able to decide to establish an embassy to the State of Palestine once all hostages held in Gaza have been released and a ceasefire has been established. France's expectations of Israel will be no less great. Together with our European partners, we will link the level of our cooperation with Israel to the steps it takes to end the war and negotiate peace. It is indeed by this path that we will obtain a sovereign, independent, and demilitarized State of Palestine, bringing together all its territories, recognizing Israel, and being recognized by Israel in a region that will at last know peace. I also expect our Arab and Muslim partners who have not yet done so to honor their commitment to recognize the State of Israel and to maintain normal relations with it once the State of Palestine has been established. Thus, we will demonstrate a double recognition to the benefit of peace and the security of all in the Near East. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our peace plan. It establishes a demanding sequence to exit war and enter a decisive phase of negotiations. It allows Israeli-Palestinian peace to become the first pillar of a new architecture of peace and security in the Near and Middle East. It also lends credibility to the possibility of greater economic integration. Nothing will be possible unless the Israeli authorities fully embrace our renewed ambition, finally, to reach the two-state solution. I know their reticence and their fears. I listen with great respect to the Israeli people, to their sorrow and their fatigue. And I want to believe that the Israeli authorities will also listen and will know how to commit in turn. I know that the Israeli people and its leaders can find the strength. I remember the young man I was when I learned of the terrible assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, nearly 30 years ago, killed for having wanted peace. At the moment when death was about to seize him, the heroic warrior of the State of Israel had just spoken these words: "I fought as long as there was no chance to make peace." That chance exists here today. 142 states are offering this peace, a hand outstretched, ready to be grasped. So yes, the time has come to stop the war in Gaza, the massacres, the death, immediately. Urgency commands it. The time has come for Israel to live in peace and security, from Galilee to the Red Sea, by way of the Dead Sea, the Sea of Tiberias, and Jerusalem. The time has come for the existence of the State of Israel to be questioned nowhere and to become a self-evidence. The time has come to do justice to the Palestinian people and thus to recognize a State of Palestine, a brother and a neighbor, in Gaza and the West Bank, and through Jerusalem. The time has come to drive from these lands the hideous face of terrorism and to build peace. Yes, build peace. That is what brings us together here. And such is the hope that can be constructed. And as for some a new year begins, it is a choice to be made, and it is our duty. Peace is far more demanding, far more difficult than all wars. But the time has come. This speech by Emmanuel Macron has already entered history as a turning point. It was not only the official recognition of the State of Palestine, it was also a discourse that revealed the very drama of world politics, the confrontation of memory, suffering, and hope. First, Macron's refrain, "The time has come," gave rhythm to his words. It was not only rhetoric, it was both prophecy and judgment, a moral clock marking the urgency of action. Second, the speech was built on parallels, the trauma of Israelis after October 7th, 2023, and the exhaustion of Palestinians after decades of conflict. Macron united these two sorrows in one ethical principle: one life equals one life. In that formula, politics became universal morality. Third, France presented itself not as a neutral observer, but as a guardian of balance. Macron spoke as the voice of history, recognizing Israel's right to security and Palestine's right to statehood as two inseparable obligations. Fourth, recognition was framed not as a victory for Hamas, but as its defeat. In Macron's words, this act deprived terror of its ideological ground and transformed diplomacy into a weapon against hatred. Fifth, the geopolitical dimension was clear. By linking recognition to a peace plan prepared jointly with Saudi Arabia, Macron positioned France at the center of a new regional architecture, one where the West and the Islamic world converge in the pursuit of peace. Finally, his conclusion transcended politics. The time has come to cast out the hideous face of terror and to build peace. These words sounded like a civic liturgy, an invocation to humanity itself. Thus, we have heard a speech that is already part of history, and we have reflected on its meaning for diplomacy, ethics, and humanity. This was the full translation of President Macron's address. This was also an analytical reading, showing the deeper dimension of his words. And this is now a voice carried further, to our time, to our conscience. Thank you for watching, dear friends. Subscribe to Heritage of the Caucasus, share this video, and support our common work. Together we preserve memory, together we defend truth, and together we keep alive the hope of peace.